get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private Western Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, you can see that they are now maneuvering to actually usher in their new system. On the other side, you have the patriots that are going to completely and utterly counter everything that they're trying to do. And right now, it looks like we have Senator Loomis. She's prepared and ready to use gold certificates to actually purchase the Bitcoin reserve. I do believe they want to get this up to 1 million Bitcoin and keep that in reserve. Not using the fiat currency, but using gold certificates. And gold would then be revalued later on. Think about what is happening right now. Think about how we're moving away from the private Western Central Bank system. Think about how we're moving into the alternative currencies. I do believe Trump and the Patriots, they set the ball rolling, and now you can see where this is going to take us. I do believe this is going to take us away from the private Western Central Bank system, and when the entire system starts to fall apart and the system crashes, this is when Trump and the Patriots will have a lot of leverage. Because remember, the central bank, what do? They use the leverage when they bring down the system. See, they don't have any other individual or organization or patriot fighting against them. So in the past, they would bring down the system. Even though they were at their weakest point, they would still use it to push people where they wanted them to go. Trump and the Patriots, they're flipping this around on them. Now you have individuals who have been setting this up and preparing for all of this. They're going to turn the tables on them. And when they bring down the system, and they will be responsible for bringing down the system, Trump and the Patriots, what are they going to do? They're going to move the people into a new system, the system that they've been setting up. And I do believe that they've been setting up the system for quite a while. We're just learning about it. But I do believe this is already done. I mean, if you go back before 1971, we had Henry Kissinger. He was setting up a new system, and nobody was the wiser at the time. He was out there in the Middle East setting everything up, saying, listen, we will protect you. You will sell the oil using the dollar, which is really the Federal Reserve note. He was actually setting up the petrodollar system. That was all in preparation for what? For coming off the gold standard. And that's what happened in 1971. So you can see that they were prepping at the time, and I'm talking about the deep state players, they were prepping at the time to move us into a new system. Now, a lot of people didn't realize that we were moving into a new system. They just thought, oh, wait, Nixon said he'll just take us off the gold standard temporarily, but we'll eventually go back to the gold standard and everything will be fine. That was never their plan. They never planned on going back to the gold standard. They wanted to go full fiat, which means we were in a new system already, which means we were completely in a central bank system that they designed. It's their illusionary system. And that's where it all began. Yes, it began in 1913, but look how many years it took them to get to where they wanted to go. Remember, in the 40s, the United States took the reserve currency away from England and brought it here and said, okay, now the United States will be the reserve currency after World War II. It took from World War II all the way up to the 70s for them to get everything in order to remove us from the gold standard. And that's what they always wanted. But you can't just say, hey, by the way, we're going to just take us off the gold standard and you just have to agree with it. They needed to make it look like something was happening when it really wasn't, like an event. And I do believe that's what they're doing right now. But Trump and the Patriots, they're way ahead of them. And I do believe they've been setting up an alternative currency this entire time. We're just learning about it right now. And when you look out in Europe, you can see the Eurozone inflation. It is now moving up. Remember, they cut the rates. Remember, they said they had everything under control? So the Eurozone inflation has risen to 2.6% above the expectations of 2.5%. Core inflation in Europe hit 2.9% above expectations of 2.8%. So inflation is back in Europe. And they did cut a rate. They held it steady. We know that Canada cut 2 times. What were they really preparing for? They were preparing for the Fed to cut the rates. And once again, we can see that no matter what they do with the rates, they're not going to be able to control inflation. And remember, inflation is cumulative. even if they tell you it's at 1%, it's now just going up 1%, but all the inflation that you've seen from the past is still there. It doesn't go away. So you just continually add and add and add and add. And no matter what they do, they can't control this unless we move ourselves away from their system, which I do believe that day is approaching very, very quickly. But you can see the Biden administration, they're doing everything they possibly can to do what? To bring the young people to their side. And the Biden administration, which is now Kamala's administration, because I do believe eventually what they're going to do is most likely they'll take Biden out because he'll be a national security threat to this country. But they decided to contact 25 million borrowers, and they're going to forgive their student loans. Now, once again, who's paying for all of this? You see, they trick the people into thinking, don't worry about it, we're going to pay for it. But it's actually the people paying for it, because when you borrow the money with interest attached, the people have to pay it back. So they're doing this because they're buying votes. I mean, that's pretty much what it is, and everyone can see this. And in the end, this is not going to work the way they think it's going to work. I do believe it's going to completely and utterly fail on them, because the people who are looking at this, which is the majority of the people, millions of people, they're saying, this is ridiculous. We're going to pay for their student loans. They decided to do something. They got a crappy education because they started gender studies and they can't get a job. So now we, the people, have to pay for that? Now, you see, the people aren't going to go along with this. The people, they're rejecting this every step of the way. And the other thing that's very interesting is everything that they've done with ESG and climate action and everything like that. Well, it looks like Jim Jordan and Thomas Massey, they're demanding information from over 130 companies surrounding their involvement with woke ESG cartel climate action companies. So they want to know what is going on here. And I do believe most likely they're going to find out quite a bit, and they'll be reporting all this out to the people, and the people will see the truth. Just like the people saw the truth, or still seeing the truth, when you look at DEI. A lot of companies are backing away from this. A lot of companies are backing away from ESG. A lot of people and a lot of companies are saying, you know something? This model is not going to work. And you could see that everything now is turning around, because the people, they see it. They understand it. Corporations, small companies, they see it. They realize this isn't working. Listen, if they want to lose all their clients, they want to lose all their customers, go ahead. Go full force ESG, DEI, and whatever else they want to do. Eventually, you know what's going to happen. They're going to be bankrupt. Because again, who's going to want to invest? Who's going to want to do business with them? Not many people. Let's talk about protecting ourselves online. A major computer manufacturer recently suffered a massive data breach, compromising the personal information of approximately 49 million customers. Hackers gained unauthorized access to sensitive data, including names, addresses, important purchase details. What's worse is that their data has likely been sold on the dark web by now. This is why it's crucial for individuals to take protection in their own hand. This is why I protect myself and my data with today's sponsor, Virtual Shield One, and absolutely love the peace of mind I get with it. Virtual Shield One helps protect my personal data, browsing history, internet activity, and purchase history from data breaches like this one. Virtual Shield One does this by continuously scanning the dark web and helps to erase my data anywhere it finds it. That way, my private data is better protected against cyber criminals, tech corporation, ISPs, and hack. Plus, Virtual Shield One includes up to $1 million in identity theft protection insurance, which helps me know my data is safe. Thanks again to Virtual Shield One for sponsoring today's video. Best part is you can get up to 76% off now with a 60-day risk-free trial while it lasts by simply clicking my link down below, or you can visit virtualshield.com/X22. That is virtualshield.com/X22. So I do believe in the end that's going to fail. This is why there are now many, many companies that are backing off of this. And when you look at the economy under Kamala and under Biden, it is terrible right now. If you look at the jobs, well, it looks like the U.S. added a mere 122,000 jobs in July. And this is according to ADP, signaling a cooling labor market and fewer hires. So this is absolutely awful right here. And when you look at the professional and business services employment, they declined by 47,000, a possible signal of a souring economy. And the slowing job market is also taking a toll on wage growth. Wage growth isn't there. So wages are not keeping up with inflation. And if wages aren't keeping up with inflation, that means people are having a very, very difficult time making ends meet. And this is what people are feeling. So when they tell you inflation is going up, don't worry about it, 2%, 3%. It's getting worse and worse for those people because, again, it's cumulative. And when you start to look at the real estate market, it's another disaster. Actually, when you look at all this, it looks very, very similar to 2008, 2009 times 100. And when you look at the mortgage applications, well, that level is down. Nick Gurley put this out and said, homebuyer demand continues to plummet in summer of 2024, just at the peak season for new listings and price cuts. Mortgage applications to buy a house were down negative 13% year on year in the last week of July and are down negative 50% from pre-pandemic norms. Home buyers are showing signs that they just can't do it anymore. And this tells you everything you need to know. The interest rate moved up, and now people are saying, you know something, I can't buy a house, especially if your wages aren't keeping up with inflation. And remember, the summer months, this is supposed to be the hot season for real estate. Why? Because families, they go out and they say, you know something, let's get a better house, or let's get our first house. And we could do this during the summer. It's warm. You can move. If you have children, you can move to a new place, sign them up, get them prepared, acclimated to the entire area. And once you have it, they start school and everything goes according to plan, hopefully. And at this point, this is what should be happening. But you could see during the hot time, it is not happening right now. And you have to remember, because of inflation and because of what we're seeing right now, home prices are skyrocketing. Trump, he put this out and said, home prices up 39% since Biden and Harris took office. 39%. So let's see, raise the interest rates. Home prices are moving up. Can anyone afford it? Absolutely not. This is probably why 70% say Kamala, her economy is getting worse every single day. And think about it. Back in February of 2024, the percentage was 61%. Now it's 70%. The people, they see it. They understand this. And this is why Trump, when he's continually putting out the idea that there's no taxes, people now are latching onto this. And if you notice, he's expanding his no tax narrative. Thomas Massey put this out and said, thank you to Representative Scott Perry for co-sponsoring H.R. 8785, my reintroduction of Ron Paul's Tax-Free Tips Act. The bill advances Trump's proposal to end federal taxation on income derived from tips. What else did Trump say? Well, seniors should not pay tax on Social Security. Where do you think all of this is headed? He started with no tax on tips. Now he's saying seniors shouldn't have Social Security tax. Soon it's going to be no federal income tax. Seems like he's heading towards the Federal Reserve. He's getting the people on his side. He's showing the people it doesn't have to be this way. Eventually what's going to happen, you're going to see this entire system completely implode, and the system is going to be reborn. Reborn in the image of the people, where the people create their currency. The people will no longer borrow the currency, and they will no longer work in debt. Everything is about to change. But again, the central bankers, they're still pushing their agenda. And remember, it starts out in Australia, New Zealand, out in Europe, just like the vaccine passports. And they're now pushing, and this is Europe, they are now pushing the ECB. And they're telling everyone this is going to be the most private electronic payment option ever. Is anyone going to believe this? No, I do believe this is going to fail, because when the United States moves away from the central bank digital currency, we know from Trump, he's not going along with the central bank digital currency. We know that every other country is going to follow. But again, what did the central bankers do? They actually push this, and they push it on the countries that do not have a constitution like the United States. And they push it there first, and they try to convince the world that this is the direction we should head in. This is why they've been pushing the carbon taxes out in Canada and out in Europe and Australia. This is why they've been pushing everything else that goes along with the Great Reset, the Green New Scam, because they're pushing it in these places, trying to convince people that this is what the people want. But again, just like they pushed EVs, the people don't want it. The people will reject it in the end. And it looks like El Salvador is proposing using cryptocurrency in trade operations with Russia. I do believe in the end, most countries, I would say almost all of them, will probably use Bitcoin to transact international business. And it looks like we are heading in that direction. That doesn't mean the countries are going to give up their gold. Absolutely not. Gold, and I do believe Bitcoin, that is going to be the cornerstone of the new economic system, the new currency. And the plan that U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis is coming up with to purchase Bitcoin. Remember, Trump said we have about 210,000 coins, and we're going to use that to create a reserve. And what did the Biden administration do? The central bankers, they tried to hide it by setting it to a different address. But again, remember, this is not the entire plan. The entire plan is much, much larger than this, because if we're moving away from the private West central bank system and their fiat currency, it has to be much, much larger and much more detailed than just saying we're going to keep a reserve. And I do believe we're starting to see the beginning stages of this all. U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis plans for a new strategic Bitcoin reserve would finance purchases of the cryptocurrency partly by revaluing gold certificates held by the Federal Reserve System. So according to the draft bill, under the working short title of Bitcoin Act of 2024, the Treasury Secretary would establish a decentralized network of secure Bitcoin storage facilities distributed across the U.S., selecting the locations for vaults based on comprehensive risk assessment, prioritizing geographic diversity and security and accessibility. The Treasury Secretary would establish a Bitcoin purchase program of up to 200,000 Bitcoin a year over a 5-year period for a total of 1 million, according to the draft. The Bitcoin would be held for at least 20 years and could only be disposed of for the purpose of paying off federal debt. After that, no more than 10% of the asset could be sold during any 2-year period. The Bitcoin purchases would be financed through a few methods, described in the draft bill as offsetting the cost of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. The plan calls for settling aside of $6 billion from any net earnings remitted by the Federal Reserve to the Treasury from fiscal years 2025 through 2029, and it would reduce the discretionary surplus funds of the Federal Reserve banks to $2.4 billion from $6.825 billion, the levels that currently stipulated in the Federal Reserve Act. There's also the revaluation of the Federal Reserve Bank's gold certificates to reflect their fair market value. Under the plan, within 6 months of enactment of the legislation, Federal Reserve banks would tender all their outstanding gold certificates to the Treasury Secretary. Within 90 days after that, the Treasury Secretary would issue new gold certificates to the Federal Reserve banks that reflect the fair market value of gold. So this is going to be very, very interesting moving forward. And I do believe this is just one part of the plan that Trump and the Patriots have to move us away from the Federal Reserve, from the central bank system. Now remember, countries do have central banks. They keep the gold. They make sure that everything is running smooth. The difference is it's not a private West central bank. The central bank here, which is the Treasury of the United States, that is run by we the people. And I do believe we are now beginning to see the transition into a new system, a new currency system that is run by we the people, which means this entire economic system is about to change, and people are going to see something they haven't seen in probably their lifetime, because you really need to go back way before 1913 to actually see an economy that actually functions, where you remove a lot of the corruption, you remove a lot of this debt, you remove all of this. And once you do that, the country's going to have a lot of money. This is why Trump said, go back to when McKinley went ahead and implemented tariffs. What did this country have? We had a lot of money. And I do believe countries will be paying us in Bitcoin for the tariffs. And that money is going to go to many different areas, and it will fund the government. Of course, you got to take the government and you got to shrink it down. I do believe this is part of Trump's plan. And we're seeing it all evolve right in front of our eyes. So we are on our way. I do believe the path has been set, and soon you're going to see a lot of things change in this country. And I do believe in the end, the private West central banks that exist now around the world, they're not going to exist the way we know them today. Most of them will be shut down. Others will be restructured into the system and it will no longer be private. And I do believe the people are going to take control of the economy once again. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.